introduce you to what the show is all about. We have a number of different segments in this show. First, we start off with politics, then we take a closer look at the world of business and finance. Sometimes we have some stories about the interesting world of technology, in addition to what's happening in the arts and cultural world. Then we end the show with our final segment, a closer look at the world of sports. We're going to take a short break and start off with our first segment of politics. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli witnessed the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development and the Public Authority of Industrial Development. The MOU covers cooperation in the field of upgrading capabilities, strategic management, spreading governmental excellence, and developing the availability of services through mobile technological centers. Officials say the MOU caps efforts to improve the efficacy of the administrative body of the state to achieve sustainable development within Egypt's 2030 scheme. They say it also comes within the framework of a keenness by the Ministry of Planning to provide distinguished state services and by the authority to implement directions by the state to provide services and swift measures to attract investment. Egypt's Minister of Environment, Yasmin Fouad, the ministerial coordinator and envoy of the COP27, held a meeting to discuss the latest developments in logistical preparations to equip the Egyptian official pavilion participating in the COP28 in Dubai in the UAE in November. During the meeting, Fouad stressed the importance of COP28 in building on the success achieved during COP27 and completing work on a number of pillars, including formulating a global goal for adaptation and completing work on the initiative that were launched during Egypt's presidency of COP27. The meeting discussed the logistical preparations, mechanisms for equipping the pavilion, both in terms of design and technical equipment, and discussed strengthening the participation of the private sector, the role of the Federation of Egyptian Industries, and the participation of some national agencies, such as the Suez Canal Economic Zone and the Egyptian Stock Exchange. Moreover, the Minister of Environment also followed up on the mechanism of participation of the relevant ministries in the activities of COP28, in line with the thematic days of the conference, and presented Egyptian success stories in facing the effects of climate change, whether through mitigation or adaptation. She also pointed out the Ministry of Environment's keenness to present efforts to involve the private sector in environmental work, promote environmental and climate investments in Egypt, work to solve environmental problems and economic perspectives, in addition to highlighting promising investment opportunities in green projects. Sweltering heat is blanketing much of the planet, and one unofficial analysis says the past 7 days have been the hottest week on record, the latest grim milestone in a series of climate change-driven extremes. Here's a story.
Sweltering heat is blanketing much of the planet, and one unofficial analysis says the past 7 days have been the hottest week on record, the latest grim milestone in a series of climate change-driven extremes. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration distanced itself from the designation compiled by the University of Maine's Climate Reanalyzer, which uses satellite data and computer simulations to measure the world's condition. That metric showed that Earth's average temperature on Wednesday remained at an unofficial record high, 62.9 degrees Fahrenheit, said the day before. And for the 7-day period ending in the week, the daily average temperature was 0.08 degrees Fahrenheit higher than any week in 44 years of record keeping. Though the figures are unofficial, many scientists agree they indicate climate change is reaching uncharted territory. The figures are considered the gold standard in climate data. Noted that the reanalyzer uses model output data, which is called not suitable, as substitutes for actual temperatures and climate records. The agency monitors global temperatures and records on a monthly and annual basis. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the latest numbers help prove that climate change is out of control. More frequent and more intense heat waves are disrupting life around the world and causing life-threatening temperatures.
Dozens of Israeli settlers stormed into Al-Aqsa Mosque from Al-Maghariba Gate under heavy protection of Israeli occupation forces. Eyewitnesses said the settlers made provocative rounds and carried out traumatic rituals. In another development, Israeli occupation forces detained 5 Palestinians in sporadic areas in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian security sources said that occupation forces broke into the Haskar, a new camp in eastern Nablus, in the occupied West Bank. They said a Palestinian was shot dead during the clashes in the camp. The United Nations envoy to Libya said he agreed with the head of the High Commission of the elections on the remaining contested points in draft laws of presidential and legislative elections should be solved through an integral rapprochement. The UN envoy to Libya, Abdullahi Batali, said that he held talks in Tripoli on the latest developments of election preparations, in addition to discussing involving all concerned institutions to guarantee the transparency of the elections. Israeli protesters blocked major highways and faced off with police on Tuesday as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hard-right coalition pressed ahead with a contested bill that seeks curbs to the power of the Supreme Court. Crowds of flag-waving protesters stopped morning traffic in major intersections and on highways nationwide. Police on horseback deployed among hundreds of demonstrators in Israel's business hub Tel Aviv. At the entrance of the occupied Jerusalem, officers used a water cannon to disperse some protesters and dragged others away by force. At least 42 people were arrested and further protests were planned throughout the day, including at the main international Ben Gurion airport. The drive by Netanyahu's nationalist religious coalition to change the justice system has sparked unprecedented protests, stirred concern for Israel's democratic health among Western allies, and bruised the economy. The new bill won a first of 3 required votes to be written into law late on Monday, to the cries of for shame by opposition lawmakers. If passed as is, it would curb the Supreme Court's power to quash decisions made by the government ministers and elected officials by ruling them unreasonable. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday criticized NATO's uncertainty and weakness over his country's possible membership, saying it encouraged Russian aggression. Earlier, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Ukraine would get a positive message on its path to membership as leaders of the Western military alliance meet to discuss the fallout from Russia's invasion that brought war to their doorstep. The story.
NATO leaders grapple with Ukraine's membership ambitions at their summit Tuesday. Their determination to face down Russia boosted by a breakthrough in Sweden's bid to join the alliance. German Patriot missile systems and French fighter jets were guarding the skies as NATO leaders gathered in Lithuania, on land once occupied by Moscow on the alliance's eastern flank. President Emmanuel Macron said Tuesday that France will provide Ukraine with Scalp long-range cruise missiles to help Kyiv's forces strike targets deep behind Russian lines. Arriving at a NATO summit focused on Kyiv's battle against Moscow's invasion, Macron said Paris would send the Scalp missile, already supplied by London under the name Storm Shadow. Macron said the new missile delivery was designed to allow Ukraine to strike at Russian occupation forces in depth during its counter-offensive to liberate its territory. The Scalp Storm Shadow is an Anglo-French weapon with a range of 250 kilometers, the longest of any Western weapon supplied to Ukraine so far, and Britain announced in May that it would supply a batch of the advanced weapons. The German Defense Ministry said on Tuesday that the German government has also finalized a €700 million military aid package for Ukraine, the first day of a NATO summit in Vilnius. Russia reacted with fury, warning that London risked being dragged directly into the conflict, and even some Western allies were concerned that Kyiv might conduct strikes into Russia itself. The Kremlin said it was following very closely the NATO summit in Vilnius and would make a deep analysis of the statements made by Western leaders and take measures to protect Russia's own security.
Poland began moving over 1,000 troops to the east of the country on Saturday, the defense minister said, amid rising concerns in the NATO member that the presence of Wagner Group fighters in Belarus could lead to increased tensions on its borders. Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to offer mercenary fighters of Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner Group the choice of relocating to Belarus has led to the fears among Eastern NATO members that their presence will cause greater instability in the region. Last Sunday, Poland said it would send 500 police to shore up security at its border with Belarus. Poland has seen an increase in the number of migrants trying to cross the Belarus border in recent weeks. According to the border guard, over 200 people tried to cross illegally on Friday, including citizens from other countries. Poland has accused Belarus of artificially creating a migrant crisis on the border since 2021 by flying in people from the Middle East and Africa and attempting to push them across the frontier. A senior Wagner commander was quoted as saying on Saturday that mercenaries from the group were preparing to move to Belarus. Joining us over the phone to tell us more about the situation in Eastern Europe is Dr. Sharif Amir, a professor of international relations. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It seems like tensions are rising within Eastern Europe as the months and days go on, with Poland moving troops towards its border with Belarus. What do you expect to come from such a move?
Well, the tensions between Belarus and Poland is very known since the beginning of the military or the special military operation, the Russian military operation in Ukraine. We know that the Polish government is having very hostile position towards Russia, and they always said that they fear that Belarus will be in second front. Well, we all know also that the Wagner problem was solved in a matter of 24 hours. By that mean that redeploying them into the territory of Belarus. And then suddenly we heard that Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, said, well, I have no idea about Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of Wagner, and I don't know where they are. They didn't come to my country. So I think that the Polish government think that this was a kind of maneuver, trying to make a camouflage for these fighters if one day they will cross into the borders. And let me tell you something, that the Polish government installed heavy concrete obstacles and barricades on the frontiers with Belarus because they said this is way before the Wagner crisis. They said they fear that one day they will be invaded by Russia through Belarus.
Sir, are these fears of a spillover of what's happening between Ukraine and Russia something that is legitimate for the Polish people or for people who are in Eastern Europe in general?
Look, the Belarusian government is trying to be a mediator also. Yes, they're siding with Russia, but let's not forget that the Minsk agreements, they were signed inside Belarus. So the Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to give this message that yes, Belarus is a strong ally. It could be a second front, but in the same time, Alexander Lukashenko from time to time delivers a kind of advice to his counterpart in Kiev, Zelensky, telling him, you made the wrong choice by siding with the wrong people, and you had to abide to the Minsk agreements, and it's time to make peace. So I think that Belarus is kind of a mediator, but it's a Russian voice, after all, in this crisis. Maybe the Russian voice of, let's not say moderation, but the Russian voice of telling Europe that there is no way to this conflict, no military solution, but that you have to understand that the escalation could happen anytime, from anywhere, and also the peace could come from at any time, from anywhere, and you have to choose.
Sir, what about the NATO and what's happening with the NATO summit now that Turkey has removed its objections towards Sweden's application for NATO? Do you think that this might change matters of what, or the situation of what's happening right now with the Ukraine-Russian operations there?
Well, as we have seen from all the course of this war, that the West is very slow in their actions. I mean by that, when they say they will give weapons to the Ukrainian regime, they take time, and then the Russians get ready. They said that about the Leopard tanks, and they did the same thing now, and with the radium and with the cluster bombs. So the same attitude is followed in the membership of Sweden. They kept saying so many months ago. So the Russians are not surprised. There is no any element of surprise in that. If it could change something, well, it will give confirmation to Russia that all the defensive steps they have taken now on their western borders are now clear, and the northern borders also are now justified, that they are not making any aggressive moves towards Finland and Sweden, and that they were right about their skepticism.
Okay, Dr. Sharif Amir, Professor of International Relations, thank you so much for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break now and move on with the rest of the episode. NATO has opened its summit Tuesday from fresh momentum, with Turkey withdrawing its objections to Sweden joining the alliance, a step towards the unity that Western leaders have been eager to demonstrate in the face of Russia's operations in Ukraine. The decision by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a significant move towards Sweden's membership, and it will alleviate tensions in Vilnius, Lithuania's capital. The deal was reached after days of intensive meetings, and it's poised to expand the alliance's strength in Northern Europe. As part of the deal, Erdogan said he would ask Turkey's parliament to approve Sweden joining the NATO. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, another holdout, is expected to take a similar step. Ukrainian officials said Russia attacked Kyiv and the southern port of Odessa with drones earlier on Tuesday, in the hours before the start of the NATO summit in Lithuania, discussing security threats from Moscow. Russian forces also shelled parts of the southern region of Kherson, killing a woman in the village of Sovaka. The Air Force said 26 of the 28 kamikaze Iranian-made Shahed drones launched by Russia overnight had been shot down. 22 of the drones were shot down over Odessa on the Black Sea, though an administration building in the port was damaged, and a fire at a grain terminal near the port was quickly extinguished. Moving to business and finance, where the dollar weakened to a two-month low on Tuesday after Federal Reserve officials signaled that the central bank was nearing the end of its tightening cycle, while the pound hit a 15-month high after pay growth exceeded expectations. U.S. interest rate expectations have been a key driver of the dollar since the Fed began its tightening cycle last year. Markets are now focusing their attention on U.S. consumer price data due out on Wednesday, which will provide more clarity on the progress of the Fed has made in its fight against stubbornly high inflation. Sterling, meanwhile, hit a near 15-month high of $1.2913 after British wage growth hit a joint record high, keeping pressure on the Bank of England to tighten policy further to bring inflation under control. The pound has been rallying on a stronger economy and aggressive repricing of expectations for tighter BOE policy. British wages, excluding bonuses, hit their joint highest rate on record, rising by 7.3% in the 3 months to May, from the same period a year earlier, according to official data that are likely to reinforce the Bank of England's inflation worries. However, there were also some signs of loosening in the labour market as the unemployment rate unexpectedly rose to 4% from 3.8% in the 3 months to April. And vacancies extended their run of falls into their lowest since mid-2021. The 7.3% increase in basic earnings matched the reading in the 3 months to April, which was revised up from an initial estimate of 7.2%. And in the second quarter of 2021, the Office for National Statistics said. The economists polled had forecast a 7.1% rise. Sterling hit a 15-month high against the dollar as it rose to 0.3% on the day, and the euro annual pay growth, including bonuses, sped up by 6.9%, the fastest on record on excluding the coronavirus pandemic period when government job subsidies distorted the data. The BOE is monitoring the pay closely. British Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said on Monday that the next round of the public sector pay rises must avoid embedding inflation deeper in the economy, but would be as generous as possible. Public employees' pay settlements are due to be announced in the coming weeks on a sector-by-sector basis, following a series of reviews by independent panels. Those panels make a recommendation to the government, which then takes a final decision. Asked by reporters ahead of the speech whether he would accept the recommendations, Hunt said such decisions would be difficult and had to be based on a wide range of factors. Faced with high inflation after years of stagnant wages, Britain has experienced more than 6 months of intermittent strikes across the public sector since last year's pay review process, with many of those disputes still unresolved. The European Central Bank, or ECB member, and Bank of France Governor François Villeroy said on Tuesday he was confirming a forecast for French economic growth of 0.7% for 2023. Villeroy made the comments on France Info Radio. The central bank said on Monday in the monthly business climate report that the Eurozone's second biggest economy was set to grow 0.1% in the second quarter of 2023. From the previous quarter when it expanded 0.2%. Moving to the world of technology, where robots presented at an AI forum said they expected to increase in number and help solve problems globally and would not steal human jobs or rebel against them. But in the world's first human-robot press conference, they gave mixed responses on whether they should submit to stricter regulation. Here's a story.
A panel of AI-enabled humanoid robots told the United Nations Summit on Friday that they could eventually run the world better than humans. But the social robots said they felt humans should proceed with caution when embracing the rapidly developing potential of artificial intelligence. They also admitted they cannot yet get a proper grip on human emotions. Some of the most advanced humanoid robots were at the UN's two-day AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva. They joined around 3,000 experts in the field to try and harness the power of AI and channel it into being used to solve some of the world's most pressing problems, such as climate change, hunger, and social care. They were assembled for what was billed as the world's first press conference with a packed panel of AI-enabled humanoid social robots. Asked about whether they might make better leaders given humans' capacity to make errors, Sophia, developed by Hanson Robotics, was clear. It said that humanoid robots have the potential to lead with a greater level of efficiency and effectiveness than human leaders. The summit is being convened by the UN's ITU Tech Agency. The chief, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, warned delegates that AI could end up in a nightmare scenario in which millions of jobs are put at risk. And unchecked advances led to untold social unrest, geopolitical instability and economic disparity. America, which combines AI with a highly realistic artificial head, said that dependent on how AI was deployed. As the development of AI races ahead, the humanoid robot panel was split on whether there should be global regulation of their capabilities, even though that could limit their potential.
Moving to South Korea, where the zoo there said on Tuesday it had recently welcomed the first giant panda twins to be born in the country. The zoo announced in a video on its YouTube channel the twins, both female, were born at the Everland theme park near the capital Seoul on Friday. Dong-hee Chung, the head of the zoo, said that this feels like a great opportunity to call for better protection and preservation of pandas, which have become a symbol of endangered species. The first twin weighed 180 grams, and the second, which arrived nearly 2 hours later, weighed 140 grams. Chung said that between 40% and 50% of panda births result in twins. China has been sending its black and white ambassadors abroad in a sign of goodwill since the 1950s as part of what is known as a panda diplomacy. The birth of the twins comes nearly 3 years after Fu Bao, the first panda to be born in South Korea, came into the world with the same parents, Ai Bao and Li Bao. Fu Bao was due to be returned to China by July next year at the latest. And joining us over the phone to tell us more about the AI robot conference is Dr. Mohammad Azam, an IT expert. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you and your distinguished viewers.
Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Can you tell us a bit about this conference between them? I mean, this is very interesting, the fact that robots and humans held a conference for the very first time. What do you think of this conference?
Actually, this is totally matching the notion of how would be the cooperation between humans and machines. Actually, we are living in an era that artificial intelligence will play a greater role. And of course, this will dictate us a different thing that we need to focus on, how machines will cooperate with humans and how humans will cooperate with machines.
Yes.
And this is a new concept is all over the world, and mainly this concept is will help us to understand the new format of the relationship between humans and machines. And of course, this definitely will affect our education system, how we deal with things, what we should know, and we should learn how to learn a new technique to be able to live with machines, especially in industrial and service sectors. Because the role of machines is becoming greater, mainly in different business and commercial sectors, that including the manufacturing sector, the agriculture sector, the service sector as well. There are a lot of employment of AI and robots in this economic domains. And for sure, this will reshape the future of our work and reshape the future of our economy. That's why it's about time to think how to deal with machines, how to make these things more easier to be able to work in a seamless format for having a better productivity and, of course, creating wealth for companies and individuals and nations as well.
Sir, they also spoke during the conference about regulations when it comes to artificial intelligence and all of this, but it seems that that artificial intelligence took off and is basically out there in the open web, but now the regulations are a bit late. It's after the process, not before the fact.
Happens in every new technology, actually. New technology starts first, then we regulate the new technology. This started since the first industrial revolution back in the 18th century, so this something is not new. But however, due to the rapid pace of technological development, this is becoming now more of making a pressure on the policymakers and the government, the companies, the enterprises, to regulate the technology, because if we are not going to regulate the technology with the size of artificial intelligence and the speed of its development, I think it could lead to disasters. That's why this was calling, and Egypt actually already issued a framework for a responsible use of artificial intelligence. That's making artificial intelligence more responsible. I need to explain that I'm dealing for the individuals, for the people working with artificial intelligence. I'm working with machines, not humans, and of course the liability of decisions made by the artificial intelligence will be on the organization itself. So actually in Egypt here we are leading in this domain, and we already issued a few weeks ago the framework of responsible artificial intelligence utilization. Otherwise, it could lead to many, I would say, areas that could make a lot of problems to the individuals and organizations, even nations, if we are not able to regulate such fast-pacing technology development. So this is a challenge, and of course this is becoming an international demand for having responsible utilization of artificial intelligence in all aspects, actually.
Sir, also like with any new technological advance, or even like the Industrial Revolution or any form of revolution that happens within the world of humans, there's always an aspect of certain jobs, for instance, no longer existing and new jobs being created. What in your mind do you think is going to happen when it comes to artificial intelligence? What jobs will not be around and what new jobs could be created because of it?
Again, technology is always altering the job market in the past and now and in the future. So we are working in the domains that machines cannot do. If any automated job, any routine job will be automated. Yes. So we need to focus on not on the areas that machines can do, because I cannot do the job of the machine. The machine is faster, is more precise, is more productive. So I'm not working in the domain as human, in the domain of the machine. Of course, a lot of routine jobs will be lost, and it's expected like 40% of the jobs that we know today will be not there within 10 years from now. And of course, as the technology alter the job market and making some jobs becoming obsolete, another jobs will be created, and the area of, again, the man-machine interface will create a lot of jobs. So you will have engineers who can supervise machines. You can find people who can do the data analytics, analyzing the machines, the outcome of the machines, monitoring the machines, and also be able to deal with machines on the production facilities. And of course, this is always there. That's why also you need an agile education system that could cater the changes that will face the job market due to the technological progression.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed Azam, an IT expert, thank you so much for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on with the rest of the episode. Moving on to the world of sports, where Al Ahly's title hopes rise on Monday from the 33rd round of the Egyptian Premier League after second-place Pyramids were defeated 2-1 by Ceramica Cleopatra on Monday. Al Ahly are currently on 75 points, participating in 29 matches and still have 5 games left to play in the competition. Ahli are going to face off with Zamalek next Thursday in the same competition. After ending as runners-up in the Under-23 Africa Cup of Nations, or AFCON, held in Morocco, the Olympic national football team arrived back home on Monday. Minister of Youth and Sports Ashraf Sobhi received the young Pharaohs as he congratulated them on their excellent performance along the tournament. Best Player of the Tournament award went to Ibrahim Adil and the Best Goalkeeper award went to Hamza Aleh. Morocco was crowned title winner after beating defending champions Egypt 2-1 in extra time on Saturday. North Africans became only the fourth nation to lift the trophy since the football tournament was launched in 2011. The quadrennial football showpiece also served as an Olympic qualifier, with the top three finishers booking their place in Paris 2024. Morocco, Egypt and Mali secured their places at the Olympics by grabbing the gold, silver and bronze medals, respectively. FIFA has lifted its 18-month suspension of the Zimbabwe Football Association (ZIFA) just days before the draw of the African qualification competition for the 2026 World Cup. An interim normalization committee has been appointed to run the affairs of ZIFA until elections for new management teams are held. Zimbabwe was suspended by the global governing body in February 2022 following perceived government interference in the running of the troubled football association. The Executive Committee of ZIFA was ordered dissolved in November 2021 by the country's Sports and Recreation Commission, a government-appointed body, amid allegations that money given to the association by the state for Zimbabwe's participation in the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations finals was misappropriated. Zimbabwe played in the qualifiers for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, but were barred from taking part in the preliminaries for the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations final in the Ivory Coast. Max Verstappen is running away with the Formula One championship to such an extent that the Red Bull driver no longer seems sure who his main rival is. Teammate Sergio Perez is mathematically closest and fighting with the same equipment, but the Mexican is already a whopping 99 points behind the double world champion after 10 of 22 races. Perez has also not been the closest driver to Verstappen at the checkered flag since he was second in Miami in May 6 races ago. Verstappen has won the last 6 races in a row, most recently at Silverstone's British Grand Prix on Sunday, and has had 5 different teams and drivers finish second in that same period. After Perez, it was Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso and Monaco's Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton. In Spain, Alonso again; in Canada, Ferrari's Charles Leclerc; in Austria, and McLaren's Lando Norris in Britain. This brings us to the end of this edition of Nile TV Newsroom Live. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.